On this week's episode, I sat down with a good friend of mine, Dan Temple from Cobalt Solutions. Dan opens up about his late diagnosis and how living with ADHD has reshaped the way he works, the way he thinks, and the way he shows up in the world. It's an honest, insightful conversation about challenges, breakthroughs, and what it really means to thrive with ADHD. So if you have ADHD or someone you know who does, this might just be the show for you. We help to reduce the stigma and the negative connotations that comes with having ADHD, and also show it's possible to thrive with ADHD as well, not just live with it. So I hope you enjoy. To help bring more conversations about ADHD like this one, please hit the like, subscribe, follow button, whatever platform you're on. Thank you. Thanks for coming on, Dan. Appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thank you very much.
It'd be great for our listeners just to hear a little bit about you, first of all.
So my name's Dan Temple. So I currently run Cobalt Human Solutions, a training development company based here in Lincolnshire, but we operate all over the UK. I've done some associate work all over the world as well, which is quite nice. Been doing that now properly for about 18 months. Left the Air Force in 2023. I was medically discharged with PTSD after nearly 20 years, 10 years of which was operation at helicopters all over the world. And in that, I completed 9 tours of Afghanistan. So we were casualty extraction, battlefield casualties, all that sort of stuff. So it took its toll, as you can imagine. But yeah, within that time frame, within the military, I was exposed to some very fantastic, it's horrendous England, some really good leadership training. And the military do that. But as with a lot of training, it's how it's implemented is the key. You can have all the theory, all the training in the world. So when I left and I wanted to focus on what I can do to help businesses understand what the challenges are that they face, why they're happening, and then help them come up with solutions. So I was part of the trainer as well in the military, as well, understanding human factors, why we do what we do from aviation, but then put it into corporate context. So about me is I'm passionate about people. The company's called Cobalt Human Solutions because I believe that humans are a solution. We've got AI, we've got artificial intelligence, how artificial you can discuss. I always think of it as if you like, augmented intelligence. So ChatGPT is fantastic, but all it's doing is taking all the information that's on the internet that's been inputted by humans anyway. So actually we're not not that I'm aware of, unless the Russians or the Chinese have come up with something that is capable of cognitive processing and thought with emotion and feeling. So at the moment, augmented intelligence. So the point being is it's still the humans at everything. And we talk about soft skills, which I'm not a big fan of the term, because we talk about hard skills, technical skills, like equipment, like operating this sort of camera equipment, that sort of stuff, that's great. But what people call the soft skills, which I call the non-tech skills, which again is through oil and gas, aviation, that is the leadership, the communication, the effective communication. How do we engage with each other? How do we engage with systems, the training, the process, the leadership, followership, that sort of stuff. So big passion about that, really.
That's really interesting. And I'm really curious about, with the kind of training that you deliver, how do you incorporate neurodiversity into that, obviously having ADHD yourself?
Yeah, so my ADHD was a late diagnosis in November last year. My ex-wife, she works in special educational needs, and she said to me for years, she said, you scream ADHD, because the biggest things I had, and I'll come on to training in a second, the joys of neurodiversity, and we'll go around, I'll try and keep it on track. But the challenge I had was focusing and doing starting. So from here, got loads of theory. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts. I love engaging with people, having conversations with people challenging my opinion, because I want them to challenge my opinion, because it may be wrong. If it's based on something that's wrong, then I need to correct it. I'm not going to change my opinion just like that, but having a reasoned debate and discussion. So understanding that and the theory, but then putting that down onto any form of written paperwork or starting that is an absolute killer. I struggled with my degree, which I did late on in life, in my 30s, when I did my master's, and I had to stop my master's. Because at the time I was struggling with my PTSD hugely. It only just been recently diagnosed. We'd moved house. I was doing renovations. We had a young child as well, second child. So all of it was going on. So that led me to last year to seeking diagnosis of ADHD, and that now has given me an opportunity to understand how people think. But a lot of my background comes from asking questions. So from the trainers, people many people, if you've been to the away days and stuff, you can have these training sessions where it's PowerPoint delivery and it's all like, this is wonderful, it's great, loads of theory. And I've always been understanding and sort of empathetic towards SPLD. So when you're training people, you understand that if people have specific learning difficulties or challenges, dyslexia, dyspraxia, neurodiverse challenges, it's helping and creating that environment to start with. So what I do now, and I always have done, and I continue to do so now when I speak to businesses, is engage with them early on. So if you've got somebody in, because I've been in a room where I said, if anyone's got anything they need to let me know or talk to me about, then come up and let me know. Who's going to put their hand up in the middle of it or go and speak to somebody or stuff? So, but I very often, if I'm in a session, I'll tell people, I said, right, this is me, I'm Dan. I'll wave my hands in the air. If I haven't got something in my hands, you'll see me sort of holding on. When I'm standing, I'm always talking. So I create that environment for people to say, do you know what? Be that person. If you need to stand up, you don't need to tell me. You don't need to announce it to people. Just be aware that if you have something you need to do, if you need to stim, you need to move around, if you interrupt, do so. But just let us know if you like. So I'll say, like, this is me, this is what I do. So having it and experience it is really key to being able to be empathetic with other people. But for me, it's about creating that environment in the first place. And even before I was diagnosed, I always try to just create that environment and say, look, if this is you, then please let us know.
So, in terms of, obviously, you said you talked about your late diagnosis. What was your awareness of ADHD and neurodiversity like before your diagnosis, and did it change anything for you following that?
That's really interesting. There's a couple of good questions in there. One of the bigger ones is the knowledge, if you will, or lack of, because I'm of an age, I'm 45 years old, and I look a lot much younger. Thank you very much. I don't have to say it. But I mean, when I was a kid, I was that kid in school that asked lots of questions. I wasn't up and around enough. I wanted to move, I wanted to do stuff, but I was always asking questions. I couldn't focus. I really struggled to maintain focus, and still do now. If I'm getting onto a project, if I don't have an amount of time set, I struggle to start it. I will put it off and procrastinate constantly. And understanding the why. So, but my perception of neurodiversity back then, if you will, was just like many of our generation, will be just the naughty boy, just always the disruptive boy that's down to parenting or lack of parenting or that, and disruptive kid. And I was that kid throughout school, but through secondary school, most of my reports, if not all of my reports, were the standard: wasted potential, a lot of wasted talent, more than capable if he applied himself. If he could maintain focus more than 3.6 seconds, he could do really well, and that sort of stuff. So I never really thought about it up until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. My wife first mentioned it and said about it when she started working with children with ADHD and autism and in that sort of neurodiverse world. I said, why? She says, because of my time blindness. We joke, I'm known, as you know, I mean, late today. I mean, that wasn't even me. That was the worst. I left him plenty of time. But time blind is a thing. You think I've got loads of time. I've got 20 minutes, half an hour, it's loads of time. Bang, it's gone. Suddenly I've got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I haven't shaved my head. What's going on? So understanding of neurodiversity, I didn't really have an understanding of what it was until I started looking into it. And my wife said about it to me. And then I was having therapy for PTSD. And the psychologist I was talking to in 2023, I was working with, she said to me, have you ever considered researching whether you have ADHD? And I laughed, and she said, so I laughed, and I said, well, because my wife at the time, she'd said it. And I said, why do you think that? So she specialises, the psychologist, she specialises with people working with ADHD, adults, on, if you like, within their neurodiverse world. And I was like, okay, he said, because we're trying to get to, for the PTSD, I wake at night. I wake up a lot at night time, visions and dreams and stuff like that. But then during the day, I'm tired. But when you're tired and you can't focus, that compounds the fact that then you can't focus and your hyper brain is just going constant. A lot of the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder people talk about is just constant fidgeting, moving. And yeah, I do move a lot, but actually it's the brain that I've really sort of found out that it's the best expression I heard was a race car brain and push bike brakes, which I thought was absolute genius, because I was having a conversation with a therapist this morning, and she talked about multipreneur and multi-passionate, trying to stay on one focus. The business is going really well. Lots of work with lots of different people, diverse clients in different industries and stuff. But I'm trying to do that and that and that and that, and the likes of Tom Stansfield and the guys, and sort of they're helping me, supporting me. Like, you need to focus here, you need to focus there. I know what I need to do. But the ADHD, it's a struggle. But back to your question, because that's what I do, get back and come back to it, was
so part of the show.
Yeah, isn't it just? But it's trying, understanding what it was, thinking it's just that the boy that's just the constant fidgeting, not paying attention, but actually a lot more to it is the why. I am like an assessment. I joke about it. I'm an assessment 2-year-old. Why? We had our first son, and I, when he was 2-3 years old, he'd ask why, and I'd explain things to him. Be like, okay. Second son now, he's 3, and he's why this, why that, and he's literally why. And it's constant. But I've never said to him just because I know when I grew up, it just because.
Yeah.
Just because it is. And even in business, when training, people ask you a question and said, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one. So let's find out together. That's what I do with the boys as well. Because we need to know why. Because we're having a conversation. I've struggled with people. I interrupt a lot. I'm sorry to interrupt, but because I know that if I don't ask that question there,
it's going to go.
It's going to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's going to go. And also, having a conversation yesterday with somebody, I said, right, you've got to stop, because you're talking like somebody who's got a passionate knowledge about something. They're talking about it, and I'm still here, and I can't move forward because I don't understand this bit. So the building blocks, I can't then work forward. It's just everything's. I'm just sitting there being polite and like, I can't. So what did I know about it before? I didn't really know a lot about it. Just a perception of what we thought it is, just basically fidgety people. But actually, it's a lot more to that, understanding why and how the brain works. And I think the best way to describe it is trying to work on the business or whatever projects. If I've got like 5 or 6 blocks of ice and I'm trying to carve and chip away at each one, and I'm going to do that one, I'll do that one, but I'll do that one, but I'll do that one, or I don't do any of them because I just step back, because I think if I haven't got 3 hours where I can actually focus on that one, I'm just not going to get anywhere, and it'll frustrate me.
Yep.
Because there's only a few ways. So ADHD, you've got inattentive and hyperactive.
Yep.
So you can have inattentive, or you can be hyperactive, or if you're jackpot, you win both.
Both.
Yeah, it's the winner. We joke about it. I said about PTSD, ADHD, and the post-nominals. I'm just collecting letters. It's a bit frustrating, but the challenge is it's a chicken and egg, isn't it? Because the inattentive is like struggle to stay focused, but then the hyper-focus is like, right, hyperactive, hyper-focus, get in there. And it's if you don't allow yourself that time. But then in comes the RSD, the rejection sensitivities for you, whereby you're thinking, I don't want to start it because if I get it wrong, it's going to do this, and if I do that, it's going to do that, and that, and that, and that, and
it builds up and it becomes very overwhelming.
Oh God, the brain just it's a
understand that myself, and especially with, like you say, kind of the ice picks and well, going back to your you're saying about the conversation and feeling like you've got to interrupt and ask your question because otherwise that you'll get a chance to miss it. And this is something, and I was speaking to someone about this recently and explained it's almost like when you go on holiday and you're waiting for your luggage to come round, and then if you don't get then in there, you've got to wait for it to come back round, but you don't know how many other things are on that belt. You don't know how fast that belt's going, and it's it can be really stressful at times.
I think using that analogy is interesting because I've been fortunate enough to travel quite a lot with the military. I mean, fortunate, unfortunate depends. But I've had some sort of decent places to visit as well through Civ Air. And that analogy is interesting because now because of my experience, I can step back. So I will to use that exact analogy, I will step back from the conveyor belt or the baggage belt and just wait, because everybody seems to rush in and get round the belt. If the belt says everybody's got to get there, and it's like, well, then nobody can see, and then people are trying to get through. So I just step back, and I'll just put myself in a position whereby I can see from afar if my bag's coming out, and if it is, then I'll just walk around right to the very end, and then as and when it comes round, just to pick it and go, because recognising that of how my brain works is one of the biggest things that, back to your original question, was how has it changed since the diagnosis? It's given me a better understanding of how my brain works, and I'm not trying to rally against it now. I understand that this is how my brain does things. Certain things I'll do this way and that way. It doesn't always do the same, because some days it'll be like fully in, some days I'll just be like blah, 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 blah. But knowing that when and what and how I'm feeling, what impacts it, sleep, big thing, sleep impacts everything we do. It's the cheapest and most effective form of medicine, and yet we don't do it. We don't allow ourselves, actually, me. If I eat crisps late at night. I've got the sweets here just for the sugar rush today, but my big thing is crisps. A big sharing bag.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a bag of those at 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'll be awake till midnight and then wonder why I can't sleep properly, which the next day impacts the brain. But the diagnosis has helped because it really gives me an understanding of how my brain works and then trying to work with it.
And is there anything that you kind of, obviously you've touched on sleep and trying to get a good night's sleep. Is there anything else that you've put in place into your daily routine, or it is in certain, when you're feeling a certain way, that just help manage those traits of your ADHD?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones I find now is because of the combined PTSD as well. It's quite a challenge at times, and that's not to say that it adds anything. The blocker was trying to go with treatment PTSD was journaling, and I couldn't journal. I struggled to journal because I couldn't focus. I didn't allow. I say couldn't a lot, and I can't. I was unable, so I struggled to. The language for me, even that simple thing there for me is the language, because we mentioned RSD, and with ADHD, it's like the hyper focus to the emotion, isn't it? When we feel like if somebody says something like, "Oh my God," they're going to think the worst. And I mean, you see the colour of my trousers, you see how I dress, and people think I don't care, but to a certain extent, I don't. But this is the superpower of being objective and not really caring, but actually really, really caring.
Yeah.
And it is the ultimate extremes of, I'm either very conceptual so from a business, I see this, I've got ideas there, I've got 2 podcasts I'm thinking of, I've got 3 businesses and a charity that are in my head constantly all the time. It's like, calm down, just focus on one
at a time. Yeah.
But then I see the bigger ideas, and then I want to get into the detail. All the bit in between, I'm not interested. I don't care about that. I don't want to know, because I can't get it from here to ideas to action. That's the struggle I struggle with. Somebody else do that. I employ somebody else to do that. But I want to know the detail.
Yeah.
But I do it in such a way that's not micromanaged. I don't want to say, right, what do you know? It's because it's just for my own head. Not because I want to judge on how you're doing it. You do it. I just want to know because I want to learn. If you're doing it away, I like that way. And that helps me.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, I'm trying to think what the question was, because I've gone off track again, was between the two is the extremes of there. And for me, it's the language that I use. I check myself. But also, so I started on medication. I wasn't sure about it, but I started on it. It's helped quite a bit, almost just a bit of balance. But it's now helped me to journal loads. And journaling for me is a big thing. I now have 2 journals. Well, I've actually got 4. And I didn't bring them today because I'm going out afterwards. But I've got 4 of them. But I have 2 that I use. I try to use daily, but I also now don't beat myself up for things necessarily. So another thing is, if I don't do something or didn't go well, I try not to beat myself up. I don't say I don't do it, because I'll be lying to you.
Yeah.
You know that. So the language that I use for myself is key, and then journaling, and just taking that moment of slowing down. Right, I've got 2 journals. One journal is I just write in it. There's very little structure. I just write what's in my head. Right, that can be within 20 minutes, half an hour, I filled 7-8 pages. And it's like a halfway between an A5 and an A4 book. But it's just so cathartic just to get it all out of my head.
Yeah.
And I sort of tend to do that. There's no set point of the day, but I take it pretty much everywhere I go. I've got my laptop bag has got both journals in. And my other journal is my gratitude journal, which is nothing goes in there but positive. So like last week, I took my boys down to the Isle of Wight to see my parents. My wife's, she's taken them this week. I had them last week. So I took them down to the Isle of Wight, and it was challenging. I'm not going to lie to you, it was a 3 and a 9-year-old. It's challenging for them because of separation, and in the last year it's happened. So they're adjusting to that. It's a long travel time. They're tired from the end of term. I've got the business going on. I've got a couple of big projects working on at the moment with clients. I've also been asked to submit a paper to speak at a conference in Canada, a safety conference in Canada in November. So all of that completely was overwhelming last week. And I was like, right. So I didn't journal for like 4 days, 5 days, and stuff was in my head, and it was just swimming around. I went cold swimming. I was swimming in the sea. I went in the Solent. God, that was cold. That helped me. But then if I didn't do that, I recognised. But the journaling for me is the big one. It's just taking that time. The gratitude journal is the positive. There's nothing negative in there. The reason I mentioned about the boys is I could say, like, went down to Isle of Wight to my boys last week, and I stopped myself because there's sometimes I want to write this in, and this happened, but this happened, but that happened. But actually, irrelevant all that, only just put in positives.
Yeah.
Things that I'm grateful for. What do I wake up? I try and talk to myself, right, what am I grateful for today? What have I got? I've got the house. It's a rental. Love it. It's not mine, but you know what? It's a house. I've got a room. I've got an office in it. I've got a spare bedroom for the boys. Up until about 3-4 days ago, you know the flip charts you get them about. I had them sticky ones. I stuck them on my living room wall. 15 of them, all across my living room walls. My office had 7 of them on the walls. It's just ideas, and that helped me getting stuff out of my head. Back to your question, getting stuff out of my head. So journaling or on the walls. Moving that on to something else. That's sorry. Journal and taking time is the key one. Time and stuff.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think. Well, I know for me, I can certainly relate to that, and probably a lot of our listeners, people that I've spoke to as well that also have ADHD, is like you say, is with all those thoughts going on in your head, it's finding a place for them. And I know for me, you've seen my book today, but for me, it's really a bit like you with your journaling, really crucial. I get everything out that I need to do in order to stay focused, because it's like you say, that kind of the fast car that's going with all those ideas, kind of can't keep up with them.
You find it's like going around a roundabout, isn't it? Because there's so many exits. You're like, which one do I take?
Yeah,
constantly going around.
And without that tool, for me, it becomes that's very overwhelming, and then I end up not completing anything. Okay. So no, it's really interesting that works for you as well, and especially with, so it's not something I've done about the journaling with the just positive, but it's something that I might certainly take away myself, because obviously with ADHD and like you touched on earlier about that kind of rejection sensitivity, it's really huge and amplified. It's huge. And that fear of doing, like you say, either upsetting someone or feeling like you're doing something wrong, can just weigh on you so much more. So, and
it's all made up in here, isn't it? The rest of it is there's no evidence for it. There's plenty of evidence to support that what we're doing right, but in our head, we made it up. And we're telling ourselves this is going to happen, because one of the superpowers is being able to be objective and think ahead. I love playing chess because I can think steps ahead, but they've got to be real steps.
And this is the conversation that I had with my other half actually yesterday. So I was saying, but there's this and there's this, and I feel like this is going to not end well, or something along those lines. And she was like, but nobody said any of that to you. And I'm like, yeah, but that's just how I'm seeing it. And she's like, but that's not real. That is just you thinking that. So just try and dumb it down, and it's very much so. So I think I'll definitely take away the positive journalism.
That bit, do you find yourself, do you have to stop yourself as well at times in a day? Because like you said, because it become overwhelming, it's catching that.
Yeah, and I think certainly since before I was aware that I had ADHD, I was terrible at that, but now kind of realising what that is, I'm much better at, like you say, understanding why you think certain ways and being able to capture that. So but it's still difficult with times, as you know.
Life is life, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've talked about the struggles of ADHD. I'm really interested in what you feel is kind of your ADHD superpower, something positive that ADHD helps with you in your life.
Do you know? I think one of the biggest ones, and I mentioned it earlier on, is that the ability to sort of see so many different things conceptually. Because I talked about my flip charts on the wall, and I've got one. It's ADHD across top, and it's got the red and green side, because from a training background, you use the right colours on stuff because it has it. But it's all the negatives of how people see us, like lazy, time blind, disrespectful, turning up late, all that sort of stuff. It's like all rude and haphazard, unfocused. What's the other word? My brain's just empty now completely. But then on the other side, I look at it and say, right, they are the positives. It is the objectiveness, the ability to think clearly and be unemotional as well. Calm under pressure. Had a voice note from a mate last night. I haven't spoken to him for probably 10 years. He's over in the States now. He's a ex-helicopter loadmaster like me, and he's diagnosed with ADHD 4 years ago. And he said his son was sort of going through some stuff with his son and looking at it like, well, that's me. I do that. Hang on, I do that. That's me as well. We went through it and said to the doctor, this is my report. And the doctor's like, well, you are. So let's have a look. Not you are, but you have to. And then he was diagnosed. And he's talked to a lot of people from our background. There's a lot of ADHD within as well. The reason being because you've got to think, operating a 100-foot long Chinook helicopter in Afghanistan, so 100 feet, or sort of 80 feet, whatever, you're coming into a landing site where you've got Taliban shooting at you, you're called in because they want to shoot at you. That's what they do. They injure people. Women, children, Taliban don't care. They injure people to the point that you get called in as a helicopter. There's 4 aircrew on board, we've got 4 force protection and 4 medics. So when the shit hits the fan, when that's going on, it's that ability to just like, calm. And that is such key with ADHD. It's that ability just to just take everything out, take the emotion out and just focus on what needs doing. And that ability to go bang, bang, bang there. That's one of the key things, is when it gets really into it. But again, going back to the conceptual point is, like I said before, it's ideas. Just absolutely buzzing with ideas, bringing those all the time, seeing, what about that? Seeing things from such different perspectives. That problem solving.
Yep.
We
Not
talk about
thinking outside the box.
That's it. Yeah. Don't think outside the box. Think like there is no box. Oh, sorry. But it is. It's so key, though, isn't it? Because we see things in such a different way. I say we're like a super army against everybody else. It's not, but the beauty of the neurodivergency is being able to see things from a different perspective. And I think that it can be quite challenging, because some people will look at it like, why are you thinking that? And you get dismissed. It can be quite dismissed quite easily, especially if you're the new person in a role or in a team. And you've got these thoughts and ideas, but if you don't have the confidence, the belief to speak up, the environment within your business is not allowing you to speak up, because you get dismissed, or your ideas get dismissed because you're new, or because you're just a bit quirky or weird and you never sit still, or you always fidget in or something. It can be quite dismissive. But actually, that one voice, when stuff's going on a bigger project, that one voice can save thousands, millions of pounds. Because why are we doing this? Because we've always done it this way. No, genuinely, why are we doing it? I'll ask her, why are we doing it? Rather than saying why, now, there's another thing I use daily is, rather than saying why, is, can you just explain to me what we're doing, please? Because I don't understand it, I don't follow it. And people look at me like, yeah, you do. I said, no, genuinely, I don't. I just need to know the background as to why. And what I've been doing is probing their thought process, to allowing them to sort of think and give me, it might be wrong, it might be right, but at least I know, then that's fine. I get it. But if it's something that's glaringly obvious, if I say to you, John, if you do that, you're just going to screw this project and cost a couple of millions of pounds, you'll be like, jog on.
Yeah.
So I ask you, so can you just talk me through this process, please? Why are you doing this? It's about having that ability to see things from a different perspective. I think for me is one of the biggest things. Conceptual thinking, we talked about the extreme conceptual thinking, but also the detail. Having to know the detail, because that is a superpower at times. It can also be an absolute pain in the backside. You need to know the detail, the why. But it's being able to see things objectively, differently, and from a different perspective. I think it's one of the key things, and that calmness under pressure.
Yeah, somebody that was speaking to recently said we're great in a crisis. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's what I said. David said in the voice note last night. He said the amount of people. He said we would gravitate towards that role as aircrew, because the ability to handle that pressure at that point in time, when our second son was born, that was when it really triggered my PTSD, because my wife was in hospital, we were in the room, we had a number of medics, we had nurses, we had lots of staff in because of challenges. And the senior nurse afterwards, she said to me, if you ever watch like 24 Hours in A&E, you'll always have somebody stood back that's overseeing everything. Because when you're in, sometimes it's very difficult. It's not, it's just very difficult. You're blinkered, you focus on that. You need to have that viewpoint. Somebody stands back and just watches what's going on. She said to me, you were just calm. You didn't, well, you said you were looking around, you're assessing, you were calm, right? You said the right thing to your wife. You said, okay, everything's okay. You're looking across. And inside, when I was dying, I was literally, everything was falling apart. Our son was born, he was cyanide, he was blue, he was just loose. I looked over my shoulder, I could see there's 2 medics, and they were holding the little boy up. And he was just like flopping. And all I could see was 2 medics in the back of the aircraft. I completely disassociated. I was back in the aircraft at that point, looking at my wife, and I was looking over the minigun, sort of seeing her, and I could see, and I knew it wasn't right. I knew where we were was wrong, that this wasn't real, what I was seeing, but we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So that emotion in time, I was in the aircraft, but I was able to stay calm. And because when it's all going round, you've just got to be able to just shut all the emotion down and just focus on what's going on. And it's absolutely, Dave was saying, it's really interesting as to how certain people will gravitate towards certain roles and industries and positions and sectors, if you will, because of a skill set. I think entrepreneurs, we find a lot of entrepreneurs will have ADHD tendencies,
Mm.
if you will. It's just these ideas like bang, 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 bang. It's what to do with them. It's a challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know I can vouch for that with kind of working for a fresh business not too long ago, being able to bring those ideas and having those thoughts about how we can do things differently. So, yeah,
fresh advice is huge, isn't it? Because and if you're in that environment whereby the
being
business
allowed
owner,
to
exactly.
share
It
those
depends on the
ideas
size
is
of the business.
massive.
Obviously, if you've got like sort of 20, 30 employees, the business owner, it's all quite close, isn't it? The CEO or the MD creates that environment. Whereas it's when you get to sort of 80 to 90 employees, the MD, the CEO, they're just a little bit, not out of touch, but they haven't got the full...
A little bit more distance, a bit harder to make those changes and those ideas, express those ideas that you have.
And there's more, you start to create those silos effectively. You can be careful, but when you have those, and if people can't come up with those ideas and thoughts, with individually those silos, you might end up with 3 or 4 silos doing the same things badly.
Yeah.
And because you haven't got that across the way,
that cohesion and not really taking the business forward. So great. That's great to hear. There's a couple of things there that's certainly positives. I'm really interested to kind of touch on briefly about what you think we can do, because you mentioned earlier about that negative stigma that comes with ADHD. Society to reduce that, to increase awareness about what ADHD is really like.
So the silver bullet, I don't know. I think what we're doing now, what we're seeing more of, is education. It's just openness, open mind of, there is a perception. We've got like 4 or 5 generations in the workspace now. We've still got baby boomers that, I'm not going to say anything bad against baby boomers, but there is a generation, or this is how it was back then. I said Gen X, just still in. Then you've got millennials, Gen Z's coming through, and you've got the perception, if I like, is at the baby boomer and Gen X level, is that Gen Z and Gen A that are coming through now, that in the workplace, they're born 2010. I mean, they're 15 years old now. They'll be in the workplace in 2-3 years' time. It's encompassing and allowing people to ask questions and keep on educating. And what is ADHD? Not what the perception is, or understand what the perception is. Because if we don't find out why, it's a difficult conversation, isn't it? I suppose trying to verbalise it. We've got these perceptions, we've got these projections. This is what we've been based on knowledge, experience. We need to educate people, but how do you? Can't ram it down people's throats, because if I'm trying to talk at you, you're not interested. You're not going to change your opinion because I'm saying, yeah, but look at this. This is the facts of this, doing that. But it encompassing those conversations, creating that workspace where everyone, why do you think that? Because this, and this. And that's interesting. Creating that psychologically safe environment where people can have ideas and thoughts and put them across, but then also find out why. The key for me is always that why. What is that next question? So that's a really good idea. Why is an interesting concept. It might be absolutely batshit crazy. You might be looking like, where did that come from, John? I'd never do that or say that, because it's so left field. Like, brilliant. Okay, talk me through your thoughts, John. Where's that come from? Why is that? Because if I know then, and I do that when I facilitate groups, I make sure we have a broad range when I work business, make sure we have a broad range of seniors and everyone involved. Because create that environment. Brilliant. Why is that? Okay, explain that. Love that. By osmosis, people will see the 70-20-10 rule. We talk about 10% theory, 20% of practical, and 70% of osmosis. Learning by doing, being around other people, creating that environment of just, the whole point is education. It's how do we educate? We create an environment where people can ask questions. Because if we don't ask questions, then we'll never know the answers. That's for me. I think it was Socrates that said, he said, the more you know, the more you realise you don't know. So that's why you ask more questions.
And that's certainly a great insight, and I think that's definitely something that we can all take away, whether that's in life in general and certainly in the workplaces. Asking that why and understanding and creating that environment. Certainly.
So, I think that the big one is that, I remember saying, people say, have the moral courage to ask the question. For me, it's about having the moral courage to have the question asked of you. If you're asking a question of me, don't be defensive. As in, I need to not be defensive. Rather than just, why is he asking this? Just think about why is it there, but answer the question genuinely. Ask the question, but make sure people are comfortable having the question asked. For me, that's what the way forward is. Just create that moment, a questioning culture. what's the worst that could happen? Anything's going to grow, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's been brilliant to get your insights, Dan, and share your experiences. It's been a pleasure. And just one last thing, where can our listeners stay in touch with you, follow your journey, especially with Cobalt Solutions?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, quite active on LinkedIn. You'll see my colourful trousers all over the place. I'm around. So yeah, Dan Temple, I'm up on LinkedIn. Cobalt Human Solutions, it's got a LinkedIn page, but it's cobalths.co.uk. Look at what we do. It's just understanding how we can help businesses, and me personally as well, just finding out why do we do stuff. If we know why, then we can identify what's happening or what's not happening, and then we can promote a better way of doing things.
Certainly, I think that's like I said, that's something we can all take away, asking that question why. Understanding about other people that you work with, the way of thinking, like you said, and creating an environment that's open to different ways of thinking as well. I think will certainly be a big help for the neurodiverse community.
Being off these targets. Don't start me doing our targets. It's very, very valuable, but the right thing. Diversity for me is cognitive diversity. It's about giving people, regardless of their skin color, religion, sexual preference, background, whatever, everyone should have the ability and the confidence to be able to speak and ask that question. Create an environment for that.
Certainly.
Thanks, mate. Been always good to see you.
Pleasure.